Can a dream become a death sentence? In the picturesque paradise of Portland, Jamaica, where success stories bloom as naturally as the tropical flowers, one woman's aspiration for a better life led her straight into the arms of her killer. This isn't just another tale of domestic violence, it's a chilling reminder that sometimes the greatest dangers wear the mask of love and luxury. Before she became another tragic headline, Tonia McDonald was the embodiment of vibrant youth and boundless potential. Growing up in Portland's close-knit community, she stood out not for her family's wealth, which was modest at best, but for something far more valuable, an infectious spirit that could illuminate the darkest rooms. Her presence on social media captured hearts across Jamaica. Whether filming comedic skits that left viewers in stitches or sharing unfiltered moments of joy, Tonia's authenticity shone through every post. She wasn't afraid to look silly if it meant bringing a smile to someone else's face. It was this genuine warmth, combined with her natural business acumen, that made her dream of entrepreneurship seem not just possible, but inevitable. Welcome to True Crime Stories Archive, where we unearth the darkest chapters of human nature. If you're new here, join our growing community by hitting subscribe. Your support helps us continue sharing these crucial stories that need to be told. After graduating from Titchfield High School with honors, Tonia's path seemed clear. Business administration wasn't just a course of study, it was her gateway to independence. She dreamed of creating something uniquely her own, a legacy that would extend beyond the boundaries of her hometown. But fate had other plans, and they arrived in the imposing form of Everton, Beachy Stout, McDonald. In Portland's business circles, Everton McDonald's name carried the weight of both respect and fear. At 52, he wasn't just wealthy, he was a force of nature who commanded attention with every calculated step. Standing tall and broad-shouldered, always impeccably dressed in custom suits, he moved through the community like a shark through shallow waters. His eyes, sharp and assessing, seemed to measure the worth of everyone they fell upon. When he first encountered 19-year-old Tonia, the 33-year age gap meant nothing to him. He saw what everyone else saw, a young woman whose light seemed to draw people in like moths to a flame. But where others appreciated her radiance, Everton saw something to possess, to control, to own. His pursuit of Tonia was anything but subtle. Despite being married, he orchestrated a courtship that became the talk of Portland. Luxury cars would pull up outside her family's modest home, bearing gifts that most could only dream of. Expensive jewelry, designer clothes, lavish dinners at exclusive restaurants, each gesture calculated to dazzle not just Tonia, but the entire community. People whispered behind their hands, some in awe, others in concern, as they watched this powerful man pursue a teenager with single-minded determination. But not everyone was mesmerized by this display of wealth and power. His first wife confronted them repeatedly, leading to explosive public scenes that should have served as warning signs. These weren't quiet disagreements, they were dramatic confrontations that laid bare the dysfunction beneath Everton's polished exterior. In one particularly volatile incident, his wife, consumed by humiliation and rage, destroyed an expensive phone he had given to Tonia. The community watched this spectacle unfold with a mixture of fascination and unease. Some older residents shook their heads, recognizing the dangerous imbalance of power. Others envied Tonia's apparent luck in catching the eye of such a wealthy man. Few dared to voice their concerns openly. Everton's influence ran too deep, his power too absolute. Then, in May 2009, the whispers turned to shocked silence. Everton's first wife was found dead in her home. The circumstances were suspicious, but in a community where Everton's influence touched every corner, questions remained just that, questions. People spoke in hushed tones behind closed doors, but publicly, the death was treated as a tragic accident. The timing couldn't have been more convenient for Everton's plans. With this obstacle removed, he accelerated his pursuit of Tonia. The gifts became more extravagant, the gestures more grandiose. He was painting a picture of a future filled with luxury and security, carefully crafted to appeal to a young woman's dreams of success and stability. Just months after his first wife's death, Tonia became Mrs. McDonald. Their wedding was exactly what you'd expect from a man of Everton's status, a lavish affair that seemed to validate every whispered comment about fairy tales coming true. For Tonia, It appeared to be the beginning of everything she dreamed of, though not in the way she'd originally planned. The early days of their marriage were a whirlwind of luxury that would make any young woman's head spin. Their home wasn't just a house, it was a mansion that spoke of wealth and success. Every morning, Tonia would wake up to a life that seemed pulled from the pages of a magazine: designer wardrobes, exotic vacations, custom luxury vehicles that turned heads wherever they went. At high society events, they commanded attention, with Tonia's natural beauty enhanced by jewelry that cost more than most people's annual salary. But beneath this glittering facade, something sinister was taking root. The transformation in Everton's behavior was subtle at first, like poison slowly seeping into pure water. The man who had pursued her with such passion began revealing a different side, one twisted by insecurity and an obsessive need for control. The 3-decade age gap that had seemed insignificant during their courtship now became the fuel for his paranoia. What started as casual questions about her whereabouts evolved into interrogations. Innocent social media posts became subjects of intense scrutiny. The phone he had once gifted her became a tracking device, every call and message monitored with suspicious eyes. Tonia's world, which had seemed to expand with marriage, began to shrink under the weight of his control. Friends and employees started noticing changes in the once vibrant young woman. Her trademark laughter, once so frequent and genuine, became rare and forced. The spontaneous joy that had made her social media presence so engaging dimmed under Everton's watchful eye. The woman who had once lit up rooms with her presence now seemed to shrink into shadows. The public displays of affection that had marked their courtship were replaced by tense silences and carefully masked confrontations. Behind the mansion's elegant doors, Everton's words turned cruel, his actions increasingly violent. The dream home had become a prison, its luxury unable to mask the nightmare unfolding within its walls. By 2015, suffocating under the weight of her marriage, Tonia found an unexpected lifeline in Amit Singh, a young police officer whose gentle demeanor stood in stark contrast to Everton's dominating presence. Where Everton demanded, Amit listened. Where her husband controlled, Amit offered understanding. Their connection, built in stolen moments and secret meetings, became Tonia's breath of fresh air in an otherwise suffocating existence. Yet even these precious moments of freedom were being watched. Unknown to Tonia, Everton's surveillance extended far beyond her phone. He had hired private investigators to document her every move, building a detailed record of her meetings with Amit. But unlike his explosive confrontations during their courtship years, Everton now chose silence, a calculating predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The only person who consistently saw through Everton's facade was Tonia's father, Joseph Campbell. From the moment his daughter married into what appeared to be a life of luxury, Joseph had maintained an unwavering skepticism. His protective instincts, honed by years of watching his daughter's vibrant spirit slowly erode, put him directly in Everton's crosshairs. Joseph's opposition wasn't subtle. He voiced his concerns openly, challenging Everton's authority in ways few dared. To a man obsessed with control, Joseph represented everything, threatening a protective force that couldn't be bought, intimidated, or silenced through normal means. He was a constant reminder that Tonia had people in her corner who could see through the carefully constructed image of the successful businessman. By 2018, the tension between Joseph and Everton had reached a breaking point. For Everton, Joseph's protective presence had become more than an irritation. It was a direct threat to his control that needed to be eliminated. The solution, in his twisted mind, was as simple as it was brutal. In August 2018, Portland was shaken by tragic news: Joseph Campbell had been murdered. The attack was brutal, sending shockwaves through the community. For Tonia, this loss was devastating beyond measure. The man who had been her anchor, her voice of reason, her unwavering protector, had been violently taken from her life. What made the loss even more unbearable was the cruel irony that would later come to light: the very man who held her as she grieved was the one who had orchestrated her father's murder. But in 2019, still unaware of this horrific truth, Tonia's grief crystallized into a desperate need for justice. In a twist of fate that would prove fatal, she turned to Everton with her plans for vengeance. She confided in him about her desire to obtain a gun, believing it would provide her with some measure of protection and control in a world that suddenly seemed so dangerous. Everton, the architect of her pain, listened with calculated patience, encouraging her plans while knowing each word she spoke was another step toward her own destruction. When Tonia handed over cash to Tonia McDonald, believing she was purchasing protection, she had unknowingly funded her own murder. McDonald, far from being just an intermediary, was Everton's chosen executioner. At 56, he had built a reputation as a calculated and reliable hitman. Yet even McDonald, hardened by years in the criminal underworld, sought assistance for this particular job, recruiting 30-year-old Oscar Barnes, a man known for his violent tendencies. Their first attempt to end Tonia's life was unplanned but revealing. Fresh from a trip, she had parked her car as usual near her home. Barnes and McDonald lay in wait, hidden in the shadows, ready to strike. But something, perhaps instinct, perhaps divine intervention, caused Tonia's survival instincts to kick in. Instead of walking calmly toward the house, she bolted, screaming for the housekeeper to let her in. Her sudden flight forced the would-be killers to retreat, their mission temporarily thwarted. Everton's reaction to this failure was explosive. He berated McDonald, calling him useless, demanding immediate results. The pressure mounted as Everton's patience wore thin, his obsession with eliminating Tonia growing stronger with each passing day. For McDonald, failure wasn't just about losing payment, it was about survival. He knew all too well that Everton McDonald wasn't a man who left loose ends untied. The evening of July 20th, 2020, began deceptively ordinary. Tonia had no way of knowing that every minute was bringing her closer to her final moments. The trap was set when McDonald convinced her to drive him and Oscar Barnes, using the pretext of finally obtaining the gun she had requested. Her trust in McDonald, whom she considered almost family, led her straight into darkness. As their vehicle wound through the quiet streets toward Sherwood Forest, the fading daylight cast long shadows across the road. The dense trees loomed on either side, silent witnesses to what was about to unfold. At a desolate T-junction, surrounded by darkness, McDonald asked Tonia to stop the car. Her instincts finally screamed danger, but it was too late. "I'll be right back," McDonald said as he stepped out of the vehicle, leaving Tonia alone with Barnes. Her confusion quickly turned to terror as she called after him, questioning his departure. But McDonald walked away, leaving her to face what came next. The attack was swift and brutal. Barnes lunged forward from the back seat, wrapping his arm around her neck and pulling her head back against the seat. The first stab pierced her chest, blood quickly spreading across her shirt like a crimson flower blooming in the night. Her final moments were filled with desperate struggle and heartbreaking clarity. As she fought against Barnes's grip, Tonia cried out, "My mom warned me!" A devastating acknowledgement of all the warning signs she had ignored. She fought with every ounce of strength she possessed, kicking and clawing against her attacker, but Barnes's assault was relentless, each stab more savage than the last. Outside the car, McDonald stood watching a man who would later tell the court, "I loved her, but I couldn't do any better." His claimed affection for Tonia proved worthless against Everton's promise of $3 million Jamaican dollars. As Barnes delivered the final, fatal slash to Tonia's throat, the forest fell into an eerie silence. But the horror wasn't over. To conceal their brutality, the killers doused the car with gasoline, the pungent liquid soaking into the upholstery where Tonia's blood had already stained deep. With the strike of a match, the vehicle erupted into an inferno, the flames consuming evidence of their savagery. Hours later, a passerby discovered the burning wreckage on that lonely Sherwood Forest road. Emergency responders found Tonia's body burned beyond recognition, the car reduced to twisted metal and ash. What seemed at first like an impossible case to solve would unravel in the most unexpected way. The break in the case came from an unlikely source: greed and betrayal. Tonia McDonald, enraged by Everton's refusal to pay the promised $3 million, walked into the police station. His confession laid bare every horrifying detail of the conspiracy. He revealed not only the plot to murder Tonia but also confirmed what many had long suspected: Everton had orchestrated the murder of her father Joseph Campbell in 2018. The courtroom proceedings that followed gripped the entire community of Portland. The trial of Everton, Beachy Stout, McDonald stripped away his carefully constructed facade of respectability, revealing the calculating monster beneath. The prosecution's evidence was damning. Recorded phone calls, detailed testimonies, and forensic evidence that painted a picture of premeditated murder. Minot's testimony on the witness stand was particularly devastating. He methodically detailed how Everton had approached him with the murderous proposition, offering $3 million Jamaican dollars to eliminate his wife. He explained his recruitment of Oscar Barnes, admitting that despite his claimed feelings for Tonia, he couldn't bring himself to commit the act alone. Each word he spoke drove another nail into Everton's coffin of guilt. Barnes's testimony chilled the courtroom with its cold detachment. He recounted the murder with clinical precision, showing no remorse as he described Tonia's final moments of terror and struggle. The forensic evidence supported their accounts in gruesome detail: multiple stab wounds to her chest, a slashed throat, and defensive wounds that told the story of her desperate fight for survival. The defense's attempts to portray Everton as a victim of circumstance crumbled under the weight of evidence. The community that had once regarded him with respect and fear now saw him for what he truly was: a controlling, manipulative killer who had orchestrated the murders of both his wife and his father-in-law. The jury's verdict was swift and unequivocal: guilty of murder and conspiracy to commit murder. The judge's sentence reflected the severity of the crime. Everton McDonald would serve life imprisonment with the possibility of parole only after 28 years and 11 months. Oscar Barnes received an identical sentence, while Tonia Minot, in exchange for his confession and testimony, received 19 years with parole eligibility after 10 years. The case has reopened questions about the suspicious death of Everton's first wife in 2009, with many believing the same calculating hand orchestrated all three tragedies. Today, Tonia's story serves as a stark reminder that sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones we invite into our lives, that control and manipulation can mask themselves as love, and that wealth can conceal the darkest of intentions. For those watching this unfold, Tonia's story raises uncomfortable questions. How many warning signs do we miss? How often do we mistake control for care? When do we speak up, and when do we stay silent? Her tragic end reminds us that sometimes the greatest dangers lie not in dark alleys but in the homes and hearts of those who claim to love us. If you've stayed with us through this chilling tale, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to True Crime Stories Archive. Your support helps us continue sharing these important stories that need to be told. Remember, trust your instincts, recognize the warning signs, and never be afraid to speak up. Sometimes, the life you save might be your own.